The night the billionaire's baby almost died, the city hospital felt colder than usual. Rain slid down the tall glass windows, turning streetlights into blurred halos. Inside the neonatal wing, machines beeped in uneven rhythms, like nervous hearts. 18 doctors stood in a tight semicircle around a tiny incubator. Their white coats looked heavy, soaked with hours of failure. Inside the clear glass lay a baby boy, no bigger than a loaf of bread, his chest rising and falling too fast, then too slow. Michael Carter, one of the richest men in the country, stood frozen near the wall. His hands that had signed million-dollar deals without shaking, were trembling now. His wife, Grace, clutched his arm, her face pale, lips whispering prayers that seemed to disappear before reaching the ceiling. "No response," a doctor said softly. "We've tried everything." The room fell silent. Hope thinned, like air at high altitude. "Before we go any further, I want to know something. Where are you watching this from right now?" It still amazes me how one story can travel across cities, countries, even lives. Drop your place below. Let's feel how connected we really are. Michael's mind spiraled. He had built empires from nothing but instinct and risk. Yet here, surrounded by the best medical minds money could buy, he was powerless. 18 doctors. Specialists flown in at midnight. Machines worth more than most homes. And still nothing. Grace slid down into a chair, covering her mouth to muffle a sob. "Please," she whispered. "He's our miracle." Dr. Ethan Moore, the lead neonatologist, rubbed his tired eyes. He had not slept in 30 hours. "Mr. Carter," he said carefully, "your son has a rare reaction. His oxygen levels aren't stabilizing. We're losing him." Michael stepped forward. "Then do something else. Anything. I don't care what it costs." Ethan met his eyes, pain heavy in his voice. This isn't about money anymore. Outside the ward, the hospital moved on. Nurses hurried past. A janitor pushed a cart slowly, the squeak of its wheels echoing down the hall. Near the vending machines, a young boy sat on the floor, knees pulled to his chest. His name was Isaiah. Isaiah was 12. Thin, dark-skinned. His hoodie was 2 sizes too big, sleeves hiding his hands. He had been here all day, waiting for his mother to finish her cleaning shift. Hospitals were familiar to him. The smells, the sounds, the quiet suffering tucked behind closed doors. He watched doctors rush in and out of the neonatal wing. He noticed their faces, tense, afraid. Isaiah didn't know much about medicine, but he knew what fear looked like. He'd seen it on his mother's face when bills piled up, on his own face when the lights at home went out. A nurse passed by, muttering, 18 doctors and still nothing. Isaiah's head lifted. Inside the room, alarms chirped again. Grace jumped to her feet. What was that? Ethan checked the monitor. His shoulders sank. He's crashing. Michael felt the world tilt. He pressed his forehead against the glass of the incubator. "I'm here, son," he whispered. "Don't leave." Minutes stretched like hours. Finally, Ethan straightened slowly. Time of... Wait. The word came from the doorway. Soft. Young. Everyone turned. Isaiah stood there, eyes wide but steady. A nurse looked startled. "Hey, you can't be in here." Isaiah swallowed. "I'm sorry. I heard you talking." Michael stared at him, irritation flaring through grief. "This is a restricted area." "I know," Isaiah said quickly. "But my little cousin was born early too. He couldn't breathe right. Doctors tried a lot of things. But what helped him was he hesitated, glancing at the tiny baby. Holding his hand, skin to skin. He calmed down. The room went still. Ethan frowned. "That's not medically." "But it worked," Isaiah said, voice shaking now. When he felt someone warm, his breathing slowed. Grace stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Michael, this is not a time for guesses," one doctor snapped. Isaiah's shoulders drooped. "I just thought maybe it wouldn't hurt." Michael looked at the monitors, at the fading numbers, at his son. What did rules matter now? "Let him try," Michael said suddenly. Ethan hesitated. Every protocol screamed no. Yet desperation has its own logic. He nodded slowly. 1 minute. A nurse sanitized Isaiah's hands. He approached the incubator like it was made of glass and dreams. Carefully, he slipped his small fingers through the opening, resting them gently against the baby's tiny palm. The baby twitched. Then his breathing shifted.
Slower. Softer.
A beep changed pitch. Ethan leaned forward sharply. Wait, hold on. Numbers steadied. Oxygen climbed. Grace gasped, a sob breaking free. Isaiah didn't move. He just whispered, barely audible. It's okay. I'm here. The room held its breath. And something impossible began to happen. No one spoke. The only sound was the monitor's steady rhythm. No longer frantic, no longer fading. Just alive. Dr. Ethan Moore leaned closer, his eyes locked on the screen. Oxygen saturation is rising, he murmured, disbelief slipping through his professional calm. Another doctor stepped in, then another. 18 brilliant minds suddenly silent, watching a miracle unfold under the touch of a boy who didn't even belong in the room. Grace covered her mouth, tears streaming freely now. Michael, look. Michael couldn't speak. His chest felt too tight. His son's tiny fingers curled slightly, not a reflex this time, but a response, as if the baby recognized warmth, presence, life. Isaiah stood frozen, afraid to breathe. His hand trembled, yet he didn't pull away. He remembered his cousin's tiny chest rising for the first time without struggle. He remembered the nurse saying, sometimes they just need to feel they're not alone. A nurse whispered, this shouldn't be possible. Ethan exhaled slowly. Yet here we are. Minutes passed. Then more. The baby stabilized enough for the alarms to quiet. Not cured, not safe, but no longer slipping away. Isaiah finally looked up. Did I do something wrong? Grace rushed forward and knelt in front of him, her knees hitting the cold floor. She grabbed his free hand gently. No, she said through tears. You did something beautiful. Michael stepped closer, towering over the boy. For a second, Isaiah flinched, used to adults looking down at him with suspicion. But Michael's voice broke when he spoke. You saved my son. Isaiah shook his head quickly. I didn't save him. I just stayed. That sentence hit the room harder than any alarm. If you were standing there, watching a stranger's child begin to breathe because of one small act, what would you have done? Would you have stepped forward or stayed silent like so many do? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if this moment stirred something in you, tap like, just to say compassion still has a place. Ethan cleared his throat, professionalism returning. We need to continue treatment. But whatever just happened, it gave us time.
Time.
The most expensive thing Michael Carter had ever been given. A nurse gently guided Isaiah back. Sweetheart, you need to wait outside now. Isaiah nodded, pulling his hand away slowly, like leaving something fragile behind. Before he turned, he whispered one last thing to the baby. Don't give up, okay? Then he was gone. The doors closed. Inside, doctors moved again, adjusting tubes, recalculating plans. But the air had changed. Hope had re-entered the room quietly, without credentials. Grace sank into Michael's arms, sobbing. Who was that boy? Michael stared at the door long after Isaiah disappeared. I don't know, he said. But I will. Hours later, dawn crept in through the windows, washing the ward in pale gold. The baby slept, fragile, but stable. Ethan finally removed his gloves. We're not out of danger, he said honestly. But last night something shifted. Michael nodded. He barely heard him. His mind replayed Isaiah's small hand against his son's. The calm. The change. Outside, Isaiah sat alone on a plastic chair, feet swinging above the floor. His mother, Lily, finished her shift and found him there. Isaiah, why are you here? He shrugged. Just waiting. She noticed his hands were still red from sanitizer. Did you get in trouble? No, he said softly. I think I helped. Lily smiled tiredly, brushing his hair. You always do. They left the hospital as the city woke up, buses hissing, people rushing to jobs that didn't pause for miracles. Isaiah didn't know what would happen next. He didn't expect anything. Helping was never something that got rewarded in his world. Back upstairs, Michael made a call. "Find out who that boy is," he told his assistant. Everything. Quietly. Days passed. The baby fought. Doctors adjusted. Machines hummed. And every time things dipped, Michael remembered Isaiah's words. "I just stayed." One afternoon, Ethan approached Michael with an unusual request. "There's no medical basis for this," he admitted. "But the baby responds better when there's physical presence. Touch. Voice." Michael swallowed. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying," Ethan said gently, "that boy might still matter." Michael didn't hesitate. Bring him back. When Isaiah returned to the hospital, wearing the same oversized hoodie, he had no idea the fragile line between life and death had not forgotten his touch. And neither had the people watching him now with very different eyes. Isaiah didn't understand why the nurse smiled so warmly when she opened the door. "Hey," she said softly. "They want to see you again." His fingers tightened around the strap of his worn backpack. "Did I do something wrong last time?" "No," she replied, shaking her head. "You did something right." Inside the neonatal wing, everything felt quieter than before. Less frantic. More careful. Michael stood beside the incubator, his suit jacket gone, sleeves rolled up like a man who had forgotten about appearances. Grace sat nearby, humming under her breath, a shaky melody she barely remembered from childhood. When Isaiah stepped in, both of them turned. "There you are," Grace said, standing quickly. Her voice carried relief, like she'd been holding it in for days. Isaiah froze near the door. "Hi." Michael approached slowly, mindful not to scare him. "Thank you for coming back," he said. "We wouldn't ask if it didn't matter." Isaiah nodded, eyes drifting back to the baby. Tubes still surrounded him, but his skin looked warmer now. More pink than gray. Dr. Ethan Moore joined them, arms folded. "We've noticed something," he said carefully. "The baby's vitals respond when there's calm interaction. Touch. Familiar presence." Isaiah frowned. "I'm not familiar." Grace knelt beside him again. "You are to him." That sentence settled heavy in Isaiah's chest. A nurse cleaned his hands, and once again, he approached the incubator. This time, his movements were more confident. He didn't rush. He didn't hesitate. He rested his fingers against the baby's tiny foot and whispered softly about nothing important, about his school, about how his mom made the best rice and beans, about the stray cat near their apartment that always slept on warm cars. The baby's breathing evened. Ethan watched closely, scribbling notes he knew would never make it into a medical journal. Michael felt something crack inside him. For years, he had believed control was everything, that success came from force, precision, dominance. Yet here was his son responding not to expertise, but to gentleness. After a while, the nurse signaled that time was up. Isaiah pulled away slowly. "Can I come back again?" Grace answered without looking at Michael. "Anytime." Outside the room, Lily waited, her cleaning cart parked nearby. She straightened when she saw Isaiah. "Everything okay?" "They want me to keep helping," he said, unsure how to feel about it. Lily's eyes flicked to the guarded doors, then back to her son. "Isaiah, those people live in a different world than us." "I know," he said quietly, "but the baby doesn't." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Just be careful." Days turned into a pattern. School. Hospital. Home. Isaiah never missed homework, never complained. He sat by the incubator, talked softly, sometimes just stayed silent. And every time, the baby steadied. Doctors adjusted treatments around those moments. Nurses timed feeds when Isaiah was present. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. He mattered. One afternoon, Michael finally spoke to Lily privately. "Your son has done something extraordinary," he said. "We want to help. With school. Housing. Anything." Lily stiffened. "We don't need charity." Michael nodded. "I understand. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering gratitude." She hesitated. Life had taught her that gratitude from powerful people often came with strings. Let me think about it. That night, Isaiah sat on his bed staring at the ceiling. Mom, he asked softly, do you think people are born different or just treated different? Lily sat beside him. Why do you ask? He thought of the doctor's coats, the machines, the way everyone listened now when he spoke. Because nothing about me changed, he said, but everything around me did. Have you ever had someone show up for you when no one else would? If you have, write yes in the comments and tell me their name. Sometimes gratitude deserves to travel farther than memory. The baby improved steadily. Enough that doctors whispered words like recovery and discharge. But life has a way of testing hope. One evening, alarm screamed again. Michael was on a call when a nurse burst in. We're losing stability. Grace's face drained of color. What's happening? Ethan's voice was tense. Unexpected complication. We need to act fast. Isaiah was already there that day, sitting quietly in the corner. When he heard the alarms, he stood instinctively. Wait, Ethan said. We need space. Isaiah stopped, torn between obedience and instinct. He looked at the baby, then at Michael. Michael didn't hesitate. Let him stay. Isaiah stepped closer, heart pounding. This time, he didn't just touch. He sang, barely audible, a song his mother used to hum when money was tight and fear was louder than sleep. The baby's heart rate slowed. But then, a sharp drop. Ethan swore under his breath. He's not responding. Machine's word. Doctors moved faster. Someone gently pulled Isaiah back. Grace screamed, No! Bring him back. Ethan shook his head. We've reached a limit. Isaiah stood frozen, hands clenched, watching adults fight time again. And for the first time since this all began, staying might not be enough. The room blurred into motion. Doctors spoke in sharp fragments. Numbers flashed red. A nurse blocked Isaiah gently, her hand firm on his shoulder. You need to step back, sweetheart. Isaiah didn't resist, but his eyes never left the baby. The song died in his throat, replaced by a quiet fear he didn't have words for. He had believed staying was enough. Now, watching the monitors dip again, doubt crept in like cold air through a cracked window. Michael stood helpless, fists clenched so tight his knuckles whitened. Do something, he demanded, voice cracking. Please. We are, Ethan snapped, then softened. We're trying. Grace sank into a chair, shaking. I can't lose him, she whispered, over and over, like a prayer worn thin. Minutes stretched. The alarm softened, then steadied again. Not strong, but alive. The doctors didn't celebrate. They had learned not to. Ethan finally stepped back, removing his gloves slowly.
He's stable, he said.
For now. Grace collapsed forward, sobbing into her hands. Michael closed his eyes, breathing for the first time in what felt like hours. Isaiah remained near the wall, small and invisible again. He wondered if he'd crossed a line, if he'd done harm by hoping too hard. Michael noticed him then, really noticed him. He walked over, crouching so they were eye level. You didn't do anything wrong, he said quietly. You did more than anyone could ask. Isaiah shook his head. I didn't help this time. Michael paused. You stayed, he said. Sometimes that's the bravest thing there is. Outside the ward, Lily waited, arms folded tight. She had heard the alarms from down the hall. When Isaiah came out, her face searched his for answers. I tried, he said softly. She pulled him into a hug, holding him longer than usual. That's all anyone can ever do. Over the next few days, the hospital became a second home. Isaiah's presence was no longer questioned. Nurses greeted him by name. Doctors nodded with respect they didn't fully understand themselves. Michael watched it all with a strange ache. He had spent years commanding rooms, bending outcomes. Yet this boy, with nothing but sincerity, changed everything without asking for permission. One afternoon, Michael followed Isaiah and Lily to the cafeteria. Can I sit? He asked. Lily hesitated, then nodded. They ate in silence for a while. Finally, Michael spoke. I grew up poor too, he said. Not like you, but enough to remember what it feels like to be overlooked. Lily raised an eyebrow. Funny how people forget once they're comfortable. Michael didn't argue. I don't want to forget again. Isaiah looked between them. Is the baby going to be okay? Michael swallowed. I don't know, he admitted. But because of you, he has a chance. Now, it's your turn to pause for a moment. Think of one small good thing you've done recently, something quiet, something real. Share it in the comments so others remember kindness doesn't need an audience. Your story might be exactly what someone scrolling right now needs. That night, Michael couldn't sleep. He sat alone in the dim hospital chapel, staring at the floor. He realized how often he'd walked past people like Isaiah without seeing them, how systems he built had profited while others cleaned the floors beneath his feet. Guilt settled heavy, but it didn't crush him. It sharpened him. The next morning, Ethan delivered news with cautious hope. The baby's lungs are strengthening, he said. If progress continues, we might avoid surgery. Grace smiled weakly. Might, she repeated, clinging to the word. Isaiah continued coming.
Sometimes he talked.
Sometimes he just sat. Once he brought a small toy car from home and placed it near the incubator. So, he doesn't get bored, he explained. The baby's fingers twitched again. But hope, once invited in, attracts fear. Late that week, Ethan called Michael aside. There's something you should know, he said. We've identified the reaction your son had. It's rare. Genetic. Michael's heart sank. What does that mean? It means, Ethan said carefully, this may not be the last crisis. Michael looked through the glass at his son, and beyond him, at Isaiah sitting patiently, unaware of the weight of those words. That evening, Michael made a decision that would ripple far beyond the hospital walls. He asked Lily and Isaiah to meet him privately. I want to set up a trust, he said, for Isaiah's education, healthcare, anything he needs. Lily stiffened again. I said we don't want charity. Michael met her gaze. Then don't take it as charity. Take it as responsibility. I owe your son my child's life, whether he survives or not. Silence filled the room. Isaiah looked at his mother, unsure. Mom, it's okay. Lily closed her eyes. Years of struggle pressed against this moment. Finally, she nodded once. On one condition. Anything. You don't disappear after this, she said. Not when the cameras are gone. Not when the story stops being useful. Michael didn't hesitate. I won't. For the first time, Lily believed him. But outside that quiet promise, fate was already shifting again, preparing a test that would demand more than money, more than presence. It would demand forgiveness. The setback came without warning. It was early morning when Grace's phone rang, the kind of ring that slices through sleep and leaves dread behind. She answered with shaking hands. Mrs. Carter, Ethan said on the other end, voice tight. You need to come in.
Now.
By the time Grace and Michael reached the hospital, the hallway was already tense. Nurses moved faster than usual. A doctor avoided eye contact. Michael felt the familiar pull of panic, sharper this time, because hope had already taken root. Inside the room, the monitors told the story before words did. Numbers dipped.
Rose.
Dipped again. What's happening? Grace demanded. Ethan exhaled. The reaction triggered secondary inflammation. His body is fighting itself. Michael's voice was hoarse. Fix it. We're trying, Ethan said. But there's a complication. Isaiah and Lily arrived moments later, ushered in quietly by a nurse. Isaiah sensed the shift immediately.
He didn't speak.
He just moved closer, resting his hand where he always did. For a moment it worked. Then the monitor screamed. Cardiac drop, someone shouted. Doctors surged forward. Hands moved fast. Orders overlapped. Isaiah was pulled back again, this time more firmly. No. Grace cried. Please. Ethan shook his head. We need full access. Isaiah watched from the corner, helpless. The room filled with noise and motion, but all he could see was the baby's tiny chest failing to rise on its own. Minutes dragged like years. Finally, Ethan stepped back. We need surgery, he said quietly. Immediately. Grace collapsed against Michael. You said we might avoid it. I said might. Ethan replied, pain etched deep in his face. Michael nodded sharply. Do it. Whatever it takes. As the baby was rushed out, Isaiah stood still, staring at the empty incubator. Is he mad at me? He asked suddenly. Lily crouched beside him. Oh, baby.
No.
But I was here, Isaiah whispered. And he still got worse. Michael knelt in front of him.
His voice was thick.
This isn't because of you, he said. You gave him more time than we ever had. Isaiah looked away, ashamed of the tears burning his eyes. Hours passed in the waiting room. Grace prayed. Lily held Isaiah. Michael stared at the floor, replaying every choice he'd ever made. Deals that crushed people, systems that ignored families like Isaiah's. Ethan finally emerged, exhaustion carved into his posture. The surgery was complicated, he said. We did everything we could. Grace stood so fast she nearly fell. Is he alive? Ethan nodded.
Yes.
But the damage is severe. He'll survive, but there may be lasting effects. Silence followed, heavy, uncertain. Michael closed his eyes. Survival was supposed to feel like victory. Why did it feel like grief? That night, as the baby slept under careful watch, Michael wandered the hospital alone. He passed janitors, nurses, families curled in chairs, lives intersecting for brief, painful chapters. He stopped when he saw Isaiah sitting by a window, staring out at the city lights. Hey, Michael said softly. Isaiah didn't turn. If he's different, is that my fault? Michael sat beside him. No, he said firmly. But even if it were, different doesn't mean less. Isaiah's voice cracked. People treat different like it's broken. Michael thought of boardrooms, of profit charts, of children he'd never considered. Then people need to change, he said. Not you. If that realization hits you too, if this moment stirred something heavy, leave a red heart in the comments. Sometimes one small symbol says what our hearts can't. Days passed. The baby lived. But he struggled. Feeding tubes. Oxygen. Long nights. Grace smiled through tears. Michael learned patience the hard way. Isaiah kept coming, though sometimes he just sat outside the room, afraid to be a reminder of fragility. One evening, Grace found him there. Why aren't you inside? He shrugged. Maybe he doesn't need me anymore. Grace sat beside him. You know, she said softly, doctors saved his body. But you saved his will to stay. Isaiah looked up, eyes shining. Inside the room, the baby stirred, weak but alive. But outside that fragile peace, something darker waited. A journalist had gotten wind of the story. And not everyone saw a miracle. Some saw a scandal. The headline appeared before the truth could catch its breath. Billionaire exploits poor child in hospital miracle. Michael saw it on his phone, while sitting beside his son's incubator. His jaw tightened. Another alert followed. Then another. Photos of Isaiah walking into the hospital. Lily pushing her cleaning cart. A cropped image of Michael kneeling, framed like a transaction. Not a moment of desperation. Grace read over his shoulder and gasped. How could they twist it like that? Outside the room, reporters gathered fast.
Cameras.
Questions shouted without waiting for answers. Is the boy being paid? Was this a publicity stunt? Did the family consent? Isaiah heard the noise before he understood it. A nurse gently stopped him near the entrance. Maybe today isn't a good day to go in. He looked past her, confused. Did I do something wrong? Lily arrived moments later, her face already tight with worry. She had seen the article too. Coworkers whispering. Supervisors suddenly distant. We're leaving, she said quietly, gripping Isaiah's hand. Inside the ward, Michael watched Isaiah turn away. Something inside him snapped. He stormed into the hallway, ignoring staff trying to stop him. This ends now, he said into his phone. Call my legal team. Shut this down. But damage spreads faster than correction. That night, Lily sat at their small kitchen table, staring at the article glowing on her phone. I knew this would happen, she whispered. Every time we get close to something good, it turns. Isaiah stared at his hands. I just wanted to help. You did, Lily said, pulling him close. But sometimes the world doesn't like it when people step out of the place it assigned them. The next morning, Michael held a press conference. No scripts. No filters. My son is alive because a child showed him kindness when medicine could not, he said, voice steady but raw. There was no deal. No money. No agenda. Just humanity. A reporter interrupted. Are you denying the trust fund rumors? Michael nodded. I offered support, not payment, because gratitude should not be suspicious. He paused, then added, and if my wealth has ever helped build a world where a boy like Isaiah is questioned for being kind, then I have failed more than I realized. The room went quiet. Still, the noise didn't fully stop. At the hospital, Isaiah stayed away. The empty chair beside the incubator felt louder than any machine. The baby's vitals wavered again. Subtle, but enough for Ethan to notice. He's agitated, Ethan said. Something's missing. Grace looked at Michael. You know what? Michael nodded. I'll fix this. He went to Isaiah's apartment himself. No cameras, no drivers. Just a man carrying the weight of too many regrets. Lily opened the door cautiously. We didn't call you. I know, Michael said. I came anyway. Isaiah peeked from behind her. Michael knelt, not out of performance, but humility. I'm sorry, he said. Not just for the headlines. For a lifetime of building systems that made this possible. Lily crossed her arms. Sorry doesn't erase fear. I know, Michael said. But I need to ask something harder than forgiveness. Isaiah stepped forward. Is the baby okay? Michael swallowed. He needs you. Silence stretched. Lily looked at her son, then back at Michael. Years of survival had taught her caution. But love had taught Isaiah courage. Mom, Isaiah said softly. I want to go. Lily closed her eyes. Are you sure? He nodded. Before they left, Lily looked at Michael. If this hurts him, I won't forgive you. Michael met her gaze. You shouldn't. Before we go any further, I need to ask you something real. After everything that's been said and twisted, could you forgive? Type forgive if you think you could, or never if the wound would cut too deep. Back at the hospital, the room felt different the moment Isaiah entered. The baby stirred. A faint, uneven cry slipped out, the strongest sound he'd made in days. Grace pressed a hand to her chest. He knows. Isaiah took his place, quieter now. I'm back, he whispered. The baby's breathing slowed. Ethan watched, eyes wet. We're stabilizing again. Michael stepped back, letting the moment belong to someone else for once. Outside, the reporters waited. The world argued. But inside that room, none of it mattered. What mattered was a boy who chose kindness again, even after it cost him peace. And a man who was finally learning that redemption isn't bought. It's earned one brave choice at a time. The days that followed were quieter, not easier, just softer. The hospital learned a new rhythm. Isaiah came after school. Backpack slung low, homework finished on the plastic chair outside the ward. He didn't always touch the baby now. Sometimes he just sat close, reading aloud in a calm, steady voice. Stories about heroes who didn't look like heroes. About kids who were scared but showed up anyway. The baby listened. Doctors noticed something they couldn't chart. The spikes evened out. The setbacks came less often. Progress was slow, fragile, but real. Ethan said it best one night, leaning beside Michael at the glass. Medically, I can explain parts of this, he admitted. But not all of it. Michael watched Isaiah smile softly at the incubator. Maybe some things aren't meant to be owned by explanation. Grace joined them, her hand resting on Michael's arm. For the first time since the birth, she slept for more than 3 hours straight. Hope, she learned, was exhausting but necessary. Outside the hospital, the story changed tone. People began sharing their own versions. Nurses posted anonymous messages about kindness in crisis. Parents wrote about strangers who had carried them through dark nights. The same story that tried to shame Isaiah now lifted him, not as a symbol, but as a reminder. Lily noticed the shift too. Fewer whispers at work. More quiet nods. One coworker hugged her without saying a word. At home one evening, Isaiah asked, "Mom, do you think the baby will remember me?" Lily smiled sadly. "Maybe not with his mind," she said, "but with his heart." Weeks passed. The day came when Ethan finally said the words Grace had barely allowed herself to imagine. "We can start talking about going home." Grace cried. Michael laughed and cried at the same time. Isaiah stood back, unsure where he fit now that the crisis was easing. He packed his backpack slowly that day. Grace noticed. She walked over and knelt. "You're not leaving us," she said gently. Isaiah shrugged. "You don't need me like before." Grace shook her head. "We'll always need to remember who saved us." The discharge day arrived under a soft blue sky. The baby, now stronger, fuller, slept peacefully in Grace's arms. Michael stood beside them, a hand on both their shoulders. Isaiah hovered near the door. Michael cleared his throat. "There's something I want to say," he said, voice steady but thick. Nurses paused. Ethan stopped. Even the hallway seemed to listen. "I spent my life believing power meant control," Michael said. "But power is actually responsibility, to see people, to protect them, to change when you're wrong." He turned to Isaiah. "You didn't just help my son live," he said. "You changed the man who will raise him." Isaiah looked down, overwhelmed. Grace stepped forward and placed a small bracelet in his hand. Inside it was engraved one word: stayed. "If you believe love still wins," she said softly, "then you already understand why you're family now. If you believe love still wins too, comment amen. Let's fill this space with hope, because someone scrolling right now might need to see that it's still possible." The baby stirred, letting out a quiet sound. Not quite a cry, not quite a laugh. Isaiah smiled wider than he ever had. They walked out together, not rich and poor, not powerful and small, just human beings bound by something honest. But one final truth remained unspoken. A lesson waiting to be named. They didn't part ways at the hospital doors. Life doesn't change that neatly. In the weeks that followed, the city slowly returned to its usual noise: traffic, deadlines, distractions. But inside Michael Carter, something fundamental had shifted. He no longer moved through the world insulated by wealth alone. He noticed things now: the way janitors avoided eye contact, how security guards stood longer than needed, how some neighborhoods never made it into boardroom conversations. And he noticed Isaiah. Not as a miracle, not as a headline, but as a boy who still had homework, scraped knees, and quiet fears. True to his word, Michael didn't disappear. He showed up to Isaiah's school, not with cameras, but with notebooks and funding approvals that redirected resources to classrooms that had gone years without repair. He sat in meetings where he listened more than he spoke. He funded programs without attaching his name, because for once, legacy wasn't about recognition. Lily watched carefully. Trust for her was earned inch by inch. One evening, months later, Isaiah stood on a small stage at school, reading a short essay. His hands shook, but his voice held. Sometimes, he read, people think saving someone means doing something big. But I think saving someone can be as small as staying when it's scary or when no one is watching. In the audience, Michael felt his throat tighten. Grace squeezed his hand. Their son slept peacefully in her arms, healthy now, curious, alive. Afterward, Isaiah ran to his mother. Did I mess up? Lily smiled, eyes shining.
No, baby.
You told the truth. Later that night, Michael stood alone in his office, city lights glowing beneath him. He opened a document titled Foundations, but not the kind built with money. He wrote down one sentence and underlined it twice. Never let kindness depend on permission. Months turned into a year. The baby took his first steps. Isaiah was there, laughing when the child fell, clapping when he stood again. No cameras, no audience, just a living room filled with light. At one point, the child toddled over and grabbed Isaiah's finger, the same way he had months before, in a hospital that smelled like fear and hope. Isaiah froze. Michael noticed. He remembers, he said softly. Isaiah smiled. Maybe, he said, Or maybe he just knows. On the anniversary of the night everything changed, they returned to the hospital, not to relive pain, but to honor it. A small plaque was placed near the neonatal wing. It didn't carry names. It read, "For those who stayed." Grace traced the letters with her finger. "This saved us," she whispered. "No," Lily corrected gently. "People saved you." The world kept moving. Injustices didn't vanish. Pain still existed. But somewhere in the noise, a quieter story lived on, one that didn't promise perfection, only possibility. Michael no longer measured success by profit alone. Isaiah grew into a young man who understood his worth wasn't assigned by circumstance. And a child once written off by 18 experts grew up surrounded by a truth deeper than medicine. That sometimes the unthinkable isn't genius or wealth or power. It's choosing to stay kind when it would be easier to walk away. Before this story ends, take a second, don't scroll yet. If this journey moved you, tap like. Not for entertainment, not for algorithms, but for the boy who carried fear in his chest and still showed up with open hands. One click can be your quiet way of saying, "I felt you." And if you carry this story with you into how you treat people tomorrow, then it didn't end here at all. It began.